bring into the conversation now legal affairs journalist Meghann Cuniff. Meghann, thanks so much for being with us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Of course, we do know today was the big day as Cassie took the stand. We're finally hearing from her, hearing her story. Of course, that's been the thing that we've been waiting to hear from some of these details. Can you sort of now just break down the importance of Cassie deciding to take the stand and be the prosecution's star witness?
Yes, I think Cassie's really everything to this case. I mean, we can remember when the lawsuit was filed in November 2023 and the big splash that it caused, and then the rumors that started going around about a criminal investigation. There was even some kind of statement issued by the New York City Police Department that was then retracted, and it really just gave notion to the idea that this was going to be a lot bigger than a lawsuit, and I think that's what we've seen.
And so far today, again, as we're seeing Cassie, the two were in a relationship, Diddy and Cassie, for over a decade, between 2007 to 2018. And when we're diving into some of this testimony now, we do know that that infamous hotel video, the shocking video where we see Diddy on camera attacking Cassie in the hallway, hearing from her one of the first times, she says she was trying to flee one of those infamous freak-offs that has really been a central part of this case.
Yes, that was really the big testimony today. And prosecutors had set that up by talking about this in their opening statement, but then also introducing two witnesses who could talk about their interactions with Cassie, including a LAPD officer, Los Angeles police officer, who was actually working security at the hotel. So jurors saw this video yesterday during his testimony, and then they saw it again during Cassie's testimony, and she answered questions from the prosecutor about what was going on and what she was doing. And like you said, she confirmed that she was trying to escape one of these freak-offs.
And so when we're talking about these freak-offs, we also know it came out today in court that Cassie was often the one who contacted and paid some of these sex workers in the freak-offs. But one of the biggest keys that the prosecution is now planning their case around with this testimony is the coercion or forced nature of the sexual relationship between Diddy and Cassie and those others who participated in those freak-offs, the sex workers. Did we get that from Cassie's testimony on the stand today, or was that still left up to interpretation?
It's arguably left up to interpretation. She unequivocally testified that she did not want to do this stuff, and she felt pressured to do it. But of course, the defense is that is buyer's remorse. Perhaps has a different perspective on things now than she did then. So they're really pushing the consent aspect of this. And the dancer who testified yesterday indicated that this was equal participation on their part and that she's the one who actually gave him the money. But of course, her testimony is that this was forced. And that's where I think the video is just so crucial, because it's hard for anyone to look at that video and say, oh, this is consensual. I mean, he's clearly abusing her enough that his own lawyers had to admit in their opening statement that he is guilty of domestic violence. The big issue in this case legally with the racketeering charge is, does it rise to the level of organized crime?
And that's the other question is, does this rise to the level of sex trafficking in particular as well? So when we're looking at the particulars on the legal side of things, how difficult is it for the prosecution to meet that burden of proof versus the defense saying, okay, Diddy's not on trial, like you said, for domestic violence, even though we've seen the nature of how he treated Cassie through that hotel video?
It's always just so much more difficult for prosecutors because the burden of proof is on them. But I think prosecutors would say that they feel totally comfortable about this case, that they feel like they have more than enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he's guilty of these crimes. So one thing is for sure is that this is going to be a long trial. We're only one day into Cassie's testimony, and we are hearing a lot of really shocking stuff and really personal stuff that I think so many people are, of course, it's to be expected, are going to take these details and just trumpet them and sensationalize them. I mean, it's hard to sensationalize them much more than it already is. But I think there's certain things that we can focus on as a society that don't just involve just finding the dirtiest details and obsessing over them.
And one of the things that we also know is that tomorrow, the prosecution is going to continue their line of questioning that they have for Cassie. She'll be back there on the stand, 8.5 months pregnant too, I might note. But after that, they said the prosecution estimated that they would need at least half the day to be able to continue that questioning. we're going to be hearing the cross-examination from the defense. How intense do we expect that to be? How do we think ultimately that will go?
I think that's a big question of what kind of tone are they going to take with her. And I can't imagine they're going to take too rough of a tone with her, because a lot of the times in a case like this, a case of sexual violence and things that happened years ago, they want to present the defense of the accuser is not a liar, but perhaps they have a different perception now of what happened than what really happened. And I'm wondering if that's more of the defense we're going to see, but also there could be a different tone here, and they could take a little bit more of an aggressive tone as things progress. And I'm sure that's one thing they're talking about, that it's kind of a play by ear. You can plan out your cross examination only so much, but then there's some things that you want to improvise on depending on how things go.
And what else is intense about this case is that we know that Cassie's husband, Alex Fine, there's been a huge contacted conversation. You put this out on Twitter earlier today that Cassie's about to begin testifying in Diddy's trial, and his lawyers are saying that her husband, Alex Fine, can't be in the courtroom because they may call him as a witness. This statement alone caused so much uproar on social media. A lot of folks don't understand how the legal system works behind the scene. But we do know that Alex was in there for a portion of that conversation. But tomorrow, I believe once they get up to 2018 and things that happen afterwards, he has to leave. Isn't that right?
Yes, that's right. And a lot of the times, this is a common tactic, really, from prosecutors and the defense in a trial, if they think there's a strategic advantage to not having someone in the courtroom. But I think Diddy's lawyers would say that this is an earnest attempt by them, that they really do feel like they might need to call him as a witness to be good advocates for Diddy, to ask him questions about what things that happened in 2018, things that he knows about the situation, things that went on, just to try to shore up their own defense.
And it's right that Alex used to actually work for Diddy. He was a part of his camp before he and Cassie began their relationship together. Obviously, the two are now married and expecting their third child.
Yes, yes, he is a big part of this case, and like you said, he was allowed to stay in the courtroom today, but there is going to reach a point where he is going to be removed. But we're so far with him in the courtroom today.
All right, Meghann, before I let you go, any final thoughts about things that came out in court today, or really what else we should be looking out for the rest of this week?
No, but I just think it's going to be a long trial, and I do think that there's so much information coming out, and there's so much interest in the case, that I just hope people can be responsible in the way they're presenting information, and not just be too gleeful about all these sensational details, because this is a really serious case of domestic violence and sexual violence, and there's a guy who's potentially facing life in prison. A man could lose his freedom over this.
And it has been, like you said, unfolding. And we're watching and waiting as those details continue to come out there from the New York courtroom. Again, legal affairs journalist Meghann Cuniff here with me to help me break down the details of what came out in court today. I appreciate your time as always.
Well, thank you so much.